you want to get
Yeah,
into topics?
yeah, sure. We can swap topics. All right. So our topic to talk about will be fear of failure, not achieving goals,
Fear of failure.
and then here you go. Go.
So we'll each take on a role.
Yes, we will each take on a role to cover our topic of fear of failure and not achieving
Okay.
goals.
All right.
Right. All right. Cool. All right.
Perfect. All right.
Cool.
Um. So the topic is essentially fear of failure. So I know a lot of people actually.
Mm.
There's a lot of people who struggle with the fear of failure,
Yeah.
and I mean we were talking about this earlier that a lot of people who have a fear of failure,
Yep.
the reason that they fear failure is because they believe that they set too high of an expectation.
Mm.
It's almost like if I'm gonna create something out of nothing.
Mm.
I'm gonna be afraid that I'm not gonna be able to do that because that's not even something I can do.
Yeah.
It's you know, realistic goals is a good idea, but again, you do want to shoot for the stars. So
Yeah.
if you know you're going the right direction, if you fear failure,
Yes. Do you think that it's more of like it's almost a signifier if you are finding discomfort in those spots of like if you like is the fear of failure a sign that you're actually um
it's a sign you're shooting for the
yeah,
stars.
yeah,
Even if you shoot for the stars and you hit upper atmosphere, you
yeah,
hit upper atmosphere.
yeah,
That's crazy,
exactly right.
you
Like
know.
I
Um,
think it was Muhammad Ali who said um if your dreams don't scare you, they're not big enough or something
exactly,
like
and,
that.
and
Yeah,
yeah, that's why
yeah,
I think a lot of the fear of failure, people get stuck in. Oh well, I'm afraid. I don't like being afraid. But they don't take it as a sign that they're in the right place.
yeah,
Um,
because it's so looked down upon, or I mean, I,
Fear is it's uncomfortable.
yes, yeah,
But discomfort, you have to take the discomfort if you want to achieve your goals.
mhm,
Um, and in this case, the discomfort is the achieving of the goals.
yeah,
It literally it can't. If you feel like you can achieve a goal,
mm,
then you could probably achieve a lot more than that.
yeah,
You could probably go beyond that. If you feel comfortable, like if I think I can solve an equation, it's probably because I've solved that equation before.
yeah,
I know I can do it. That means now I'm ready to move on from
right,
that.
yeah, yeah. Do you think that fear of failure though holds most people back? Do you think that it sets aside the people who are not ready to meet their goals and to, it's like do you think it's like red pill, blue pill? Like you have the red pill where it's like, oh, you can take your shot and do the thing that makes you afraid of failure and dare to be great, or you can choose to let the fear of failure sway you away from doing things.
yeah, I think it. I think that fear of failure does scare a lot of people away from actually achieving their goals. It it gets them stuck in like, okay, like if you think about it enough and
Yeah,
you let it affect you enough, it's gonna stop you in your tracks because you're gonna really start believing this is something I can't do. Why am I putting my effort in this
yeah,
direction? Uh, That's like saying, "Oh, I'm shooting for the stars." Well, I know I'm never gonna reach the stars. Why would I shoot for the stars?
yeah,
Shooting for the stars is a good thing.
yeah,
You
yeah,
wanna you wanna do that.
yeah.
Um,
Well, it's actually funny because I think based on research conducted, it's actually more likely that the people, the things that they worry about won't ever actually happen. I think it's like 90 something percent of what you worry is going to happen is unlikely to happen. So it's actually literally more statistically likely that the positive outcome happens, and the positive mindset is the more realistic one. But people still want to stay away from going for something just because of that fear of failure.
yeah, it reminds me of this. I'm not sure where I heard it from, but there's this analogy someone gave where a zebra, right?
Mm-hmm.
you learned in or in science that a zebra's pattern lets it, it's like a camouflage, right?
Mm-hmm.
But what is it camouflaging against? It's not
Yeah.
the background.
Yeah.
It's camouflaging against the rest of the zebras.
Mm.
I think that's how a lot of people spend their time is they 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 feel so much more comfortable if they sit right in the middle of the herd. Nobody's saying that they're better. Nobody's saying that they're worse. They like sitting right in the background. If you blend in with the background, nobody's going to even think to attack you. You know, they're going to go for the people who kind of sit near the edges. They don't blend in as well.
Do you think that's a decision somebody has to make, or are they more so fated to be that way? Like, the thought of like how people are like, oh, you're an NPC. Like, do you think that people have the choice to be like, hey, I'm going to be the person who pushes through my fear of failure and just goes for the thing? Or is it just kind of almost programmed into a lot of people? People are going to rise over that, rise over it.
I think it's a lot of different factors that lead into the decisions that people make. I mean, obviously, that there's some people who they fear standing out. They sure they would love the attention, right? But there's people who don't like going to a party because there might be a lot of attention on them, or they feel like there might be like whether or not it's positive or negative attention. A lot of people fear that. I think the people who want to stand out, they they recognize the fear that comes with that, and they
No, I don't think so. I haven't seen him.
which one's Smurfy?
The gray one.
Is he fat?
No, skinny one.
Oh yeah, no. But yeah, I think a lot of people make that decision consciously or subconsciously. They decide. I think it's a little always. I think for every single person who ends up being right there in the middle,
Yeah.
they will choose consciously. This is I feel most. They realize I feel most comfortable like this. But they're because they sort of consciously enjoy being out of attention. They don't have to change much about themselves. They don't have to. They can pick an outfit that doesn't stand out too much, so that nobody's gonna comment. They love a compliment, but they don't like how they feel when they receive a compliment. They yes, they feel good, but they also feel like people are staring at them. Like
Right.
and as much as like it's a very positive thing to be wearing something nice like that, but you know
But it is like
you still stand out, and
fear
people.
of standing out, or like I'm trying something new, and when I'm trying something new now, I'm like afraid to stand out in that sense. I don't know. I think it's like your failure achieving your goals. Like I don't know. What do you think about the difference of like? Because there's a lot of people who set goals, right? It's like the New Year's goal, the goal for this new season, the goal for the summer, the goal for my winter arc, or whatever the heck it
Yeah,
is.
like a New
they,
Year's
yeah,
resolution
like
type
they
thing.
set their goals, but like maybe that fear of failure actually is not a conscious thing. It's not like
It's a belief that they made and they chose from the beginning, um,
from early on.
that they expect. They don't really they never really think about as truth,
Mm,
but along their entire journey, it's going to be sitting there in the back of their mind as a belief.
mm.
You can believe in something that's not true and still believe it, and you can believe in something. You can say you believe in something and never really believe it. I mean, that's an entirely different thing.
I wonder if there's more people in the world that are operating off of the belief, like the polarity between like I want to do this thing but I can't do this thing, versus believing they can't do the thing and just don't do the thing. Does that make sense? Like, because I know I would imagine it's already rare that people
believe in something that they can do and then actually go and do it. That's like top 1% of people in my eyes, I believe. But I wonder like the numbers when it comes to like somebody who believes they can do something and then just won't do it, and then somebody who doesn't believe they can do something or tries to do it, or somebody who doesn't believe they can do something and just won't try doing it at all because they don't believe in it. Like there's like the four different kinds, I guess, pair up.
Yeah,
Yeah.
I think a lot of times people are also unaware of what they believe. Um, if you're looking at someone who's overweight and they set
Yeah.
their New Year's resolution as losing weight,
Mm.
let's say this person, let's say we'll come up with a scenario where one person tried losing weight in the past. It wasn't a New Year's resolution, but they were like, well, man, I'm kind of getting big. I want to lose some weight. And then they see how a lot of people get stuck uh, with a lot of weight. And again, losing weight, it's not difficult for a lot of people. It's more about their mindset. It's more about getting over the addiction to food or the addiction to the feeling that food gives you or the stress that you relieve, than it is the you as much as you value being skinny, you value that comfort that food gives you over being skinny. And whether that's a decision that they make, it's a decision that they make every time that they go to buy food. And it's something that they're like.
But do you think it's a conscious decision, or do you think it's a subconscious, like this is my lifestyle, this is what I do, this is what I identify as?
I think it can be a mix of a lot of things. I don't think it's something like, oh, I'm fat, so I will stay fat. I think it's more, they're not uncomfortable where they are. They take that into account. They're like, okay, I don't want to be fat, but I'm not. It's not that bad. And then they also take into account, well, I tried losing weight in the past. I didn't try my hardest. I could have done better, but again, I just failed on that. And that's another thing is they think of it as a failure, not as one continued effort, right? Just because you eat a little extra fast food one time doesn't mean you failed and you have to restart your weight loss journey. No,
You took a little dip.
it just went down, but you're still continuing. You're not starting with a new graph. It's all.
Right.
And
Yeah.
and so I think the driving factor behind that kind of thing, their decisions is a lot of rationalization, but also comfort. And I think it's also almost like a subconscious, like if they continue to see that they're not making progress, that adds weight to the feeling that they're not making progress. And so every time that they don't make progress, that they weigh themselves and nothing changes or they go up, that adds a lot of almost like pressure within the thought that they're not going to do it. It's more real. It has more of an effect on them. Um, it's almost like the kind of, like, it's sort of forced onto them, but it's a lot like how self affirmations. You go in a mirror and you tell yourself things. If you do that every day, you're gonna start believing those things.
Yes.
The weight starts to build. It's almost like building an extra brick every time that you add on top of that.
Although I wonder your thoughts on, people can do those things, and that might be true. Obviously we're speaking from our own personal belief systems and our own assumptions at a base of our own experiences. But when it comes to like, I'm gonna do the action, um, do you think that the action is taken like in more cases than not, do you think that the action is taken to suppress how they actually feel about themselves as they are? Or do you think people maybe can find a more natural, I guess you could call it healthier way of like being like, I'm okay and I am deserving of being okay with love or these sorts of things, even if I wasn't at that point? The discrepancy between the two. Almost one is a shelling up version, which I think goes back to fear of failure. I think a lot of people were uh, kind of raised or influenced to be the type of people who, if you want to push through failure, this is what you do. You consistently go, but maybe not. They don't take as close of a look at like, well, why am I having these failures? what am I actually wanting and what's not meshing with that, because it's like we have said earlier, like I think a lot of people are like, oh, I need to whip myself into better shape rather than like I'm drawn to doing good things for myself. So I wonder what like your thoughts are on like the type of people that the difference between those type of people who kind of shell up and use almost self hate to like a fear of failure rather than a want to um, succeed. If that makes like there's a difference.
Yeah.
Between
So
those
whether
two things.
whether fear factor is more of a side effect or the driving factor itself.
Right.
I actually have, so I have some personal experience with this. When I started working out,
Yeah.
I hated that I was skinny and weak. I was like, I'm skinny, I'm weak, I'm tiny, I couldn't do anything. But it didn't originally. I wasn't originally like, oh, I'm tiny and weak. It was more like I want to get strong. And then I realized that when I thought of myself as tiny and weak, I could push myself a little bit better. And so I got into the habit of, well, I'm so tiny and weak. I gotta really work hard to get this, and that was my driving factor for a long time. But it didn't last. It lasted when I stopped caring. I mean, you can use that. You can use it's almost like a body dysmorphia. You can get really big if you keep a body dysmorphia can be a positive thing only in the sense of a driving factor.
But it can only get you so far.
That's only temporary.
Yeah.
Exactly. That's something that will only take you so far. And then after a while, there's so much weight on that body dysmorphia that it overpowers the motivation.
Yeah.
It's almost like a little bit of body dysmorphia comes with a lot of motivation, but then as you become comfortable with that body dysmorphia as something that you use to motivate yourself, it it adds on to itself. Before you were only a little bit insecure, and there was only a little bit of discrepancy between reality and what you have in your mind. But as you continue to lie to yourself or convince yourself, as you get bigger and bigger or closer and closer to your goals, it overshadows the motivation.
And maybe it's even even the fear of achieving the goal comes from like you're realizing, oh man, like I started this on a fuel of essentially self hatred, like to tell myself like I'm not good enough if I don't look like this, or if I don't do this, or if I don't make this much money, or if I don't have this thing. And so your fear of failure is actually fear of realizing, man, like I need to basically like knock down this whole tower and start building it brick by brick again from a place of like
Yeah,
I am
it's a lot like you need a
regardless.
we've pretty much reached the same conclusion that you hear. I think a lot of people don't really realize the thought process behind this, the 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 saying you need to build a strong foundation. That's not just talking, oh, you need to make sure like you're healthy and you're doing the right thing. No. The strong foundation, the foundation is you.
Yeah.
You need to build a healthy, strong way to motivate yourself and get yourself to get up. If it's body dysmorphia, you're only going to be motivated when you hate yourself. Well, what happens when you start loving yourself? Isn't that the end goal, to love yourself?
Right.
Well, then once you hit that end goal, which would
Or should that be the start goal?
it should be the start
Right.
goal, but a lot of people don't see that. They feel that they don't know what it's like to have a strong foundation a lot of the time, or they don't know how valuable that is. That's why I think whenever people say you need to build a strong foundation, it's people, you hear it and you don't really apply it because you don't know how to apply it, you don't know where to apply it, you don't know why you should apply it, and you have no idea what it would be like if you did apply it. And so you see that body dysmorphia or the insecurity pushing you, and you might even think of it as a positive thing.
Yeah.
But if you use that as your foundation, it's a small thing at the end of the day that you've blown out of proportion.
Yeah.
You can't build the Eiffel Tower on a toothpick.
Right.
Right? And if you think of that insecurity as a toothpick, it's going to collapse eventually, right? You can add even one brick will break that toothpick.
Yeah.
You're not even halfway to the top of you just started, you know?
Right.
even if the insecurity drives you 3/4 of the way, when that toothpick breaks, it's all crumbling.
If you don't hit that, yeah, and that thought of like, if I don't hit that goal, or it maybe is like the fear of failure or the fear of not achieving the goals, like thought of like, because of that foundation you start on, it's like, who, okay, if I don't get the body I want, if I don't win this championship, if I don't make this money, then I am still that person that I said I hated at the beginning because I
Exactly.
didn't reach that thing. But what they don't realize, I think, I mean, I want your opinion on this, is once they get to that point, still, it's like you're still in the toxic cycle forever.
Hmm.
Like it's like, okay, I made $100,000. I
And
still don't feel okay.
actually, I think there is no forever. If you build on a small foundation again, you can keep going for a long time.
But
It
it's
might
destined
take a
to.
year,
Mhm.
might take 5 or 10 years,
Mm.
but then it's gonna overshadow itself.
Yeah.
It's gonna build so much weight it can't even support itself.
Yeah.
And you know, you could be 10 years into getting your goals. You could be 10 years into building something.
Yeah. Right.
That's still gonna break down.
Yeah.
It might not break down completely, and you might have better ideas at the end of that.
Right.
But now you need to definitely build a strong foundation. Like for
Right.
me, it worked at the beginning when I started working out. It
Yeah.
worked. It worked really well,
Yeah.
and it got me to a point that I enjoyed. I began liking who I was because it,
But
just because of that. Which when I started liking who I was, it actually broke down. It knocked the foundation out from under me
Right.
because my foundation was self-hate. It was
Yeah.
self-loathing. I didn't want to be where I was.
Yeah.
But if you like where you are, you can stay there forever.
Yeah. That's the thing I wonder with so many people. I bet most people are building on those sorts of foundations, and it just ends up, you drive yourself into a wall, like you said. Just because you have a speed bump in the road doesn't mean it's the end. But if you've built your entire identity on, man, I have to look this good, and then let's say you injure yourself or you get sick and you can't go and weight lift, you can't get healthy, you can't keep making these goals, you can't go into work and make your money, but you have this goal, people view that as the end of the world, rather than, hey, you're having this mini failure, but just because you have this failure doesn't mean it's the thing that you will ever experience. Doesn't mean it's the end of the world, and it's not the last failure you're going to have. But people who identify, and I think who build their identity on, oh, I need to be this person. I need to be the person who's built and is jacked and who looks good, rather than consistent efforts. And oh, I got sick this week. I can't work out. I need to take time for my body to recover, and they give themselves that time rather than looking at that as like, oh, that's such a defeat. Now I'm afraid I'm never going to reach my end goal. They just look at it as like it's just a speed bump. You can always, I think, consistently be better. But I don't know. What do you think?
I mean, I think that's valid for sure. I think another huge factor
Mm.
is the people that you surround yourself with.
Mm.
If you're in a situation or you hang out with a group of people,
Yeah.
with who, let's say you and all of your friends have body dysmorphia, you go to the gym. All of your friends are working off of this initial insecurity, and all of your friends think that that's the best way. Maybe you've discussed it, maybe you haven't. You think that that's the best way to reach success.
You're all going at it from a place of the same common goal.
Exactly.
Of discomfort with how you currently look.
Exactly. And whether that's a healthy way or not, we can disregard that. What matters is, let's say I break down. Let's say I'm in a group of 5 people and I break down. My foundation breaks down. The insecurity breaks down, and I'm happy to be myself. And I can't express that with the people that I hang out with.
Because maybe they haven't gotten to the breaking point.
They don't see the value of that. And if they see the value of that, they won't even be able to see the value of that.
But do you think that that's on them, or do you think that that's
I think that's something that you can't really teach that. I think,
they have to experience it for themselves?
yeah, it's almost like you have to hit rock bottom one more time.
So is it? Do you think that people who, I mean, I'm sure that there's people who would understand the experience of like a sports competition and their teammates don't understand. Or, like, do you think that these concepts and rules and things like that, like, they transcend outside of just this specific subtopic that we're talking about with weightlifting? And if they do transcend to all these other categories, what do you think are some categories that, is there specific for certain things? Like,
Yeah, there's a lot of things. Starting a family, I have no experience with that. But I think that if you start a family with, you can't start a family purely be like, if you want to raise a child,
yeah,
you can't raise that child out of fear of the child being a bad child,
mm,
right? That's insecurity. That's maybe not. It's not insecurity with yourself, but it's more insecurity with
your
your
capabilities.
capabilities. It's more insecurity, and also insecurity with what you're able to put onto them,
Yeah,
or what you're insecure for them.
yeah,
You don't want them to have a bad future. The best way to raise a child, in my opinion, is to push, like, you lift them up. You don't compare them.
right.
You help them understand why a good foundation is
And
important.
this is coming from our ignorant perspective.
Exactly, yeah. But something I've noticed with myself and with other people that I've discussed, different people with different family dynamics.
Mhm.
My personal, it's more of a fear of, you don't do bad. If you do bad, I'm going to punish you so that you do good.
But that's what I mean. I think that that's sort of the fear of failure mindset. Like, um, I want to know, like, do you think that they're like that approach that we're talking about with like doing something out of care and out of love and out of actual passion rather than out of, oh man, if I don't achieve this, then I'm this worthless person, is, is that the approach and mindset that people should be trying to be aware of, and keeping that discrepancy between the love, doing something out of love and doing something out of fear? Is that something people should be keeping consistent with all of these different categories, or is there nuance? Is there different approaches you should take with sports, with business, with school, with um, relationships, with friendships, or does that message kind of transcend the same throughout
I think that definitely reflects across all categories. Um, I think there's things you could probably get away with,
all?
maybe short term goals, but again, you'd be reaching that through an unhealthy way.
Mm,
That'd be like if your goal is to get a tattoo and
yeah,
you like scar yourself to get
yeah,
that
yeah,
marking. Sure, you have the marking,
yeah,
but along the way, you got a pretty unhealthy.
yeah. Relationship with that
Yeah.
marking, yeah,
I can build a business out of fear of losing everything, or out of fear of being less than.
mm,
But now that what I associate with that business is being less than. Sure, I might have proved to everybody else, but I didn't prove that to myself. I didn't prove that I'm
mm,
better to myself, because the whole time I'm building out of fear of being less than.
yeah,
And so that's just what I automatically associate.
mm,
So I think that definitely applies to a lot of. I think, yeah, there's definitely some things you could get away with it, but it's definitely not the best way. It's definitely not the most efficient, or the most healthy in the long term.
yeah.
Um,
I think that if there was one thing that I could, I mean, and you let me know what you think, but I think on a deeper level, there was something that I could ask, like, any person in the world, is whatever they think, and that can transcend categories. I mean, like you said, I agree with you. I think that you have to, view, if you have a business or work, relationships, you have these different places and the nuance of what sphere you're in. You have to ask yourself, well, who am I without this thing? And if you think that your answer is I'm nobody, I'm nothing, I think. I mean, let me know what you think. I think for me, at a certain point, for certain categories, I'd be like, oh no, I just love that thing. That's why I would feel worthless without it. When actually, you are human. even if you fail, you are human. Even if you don't achieve the goals you set out with, you're a human being. You're not any more or any less deserving. You're not more deserving of anything if you achieve something. You're not less deserving of anything if you don't, and vice versa. And I think that people just have to be able to ask themselves, well, who would I be without this thing? And if your answer is nobody, then you're coming from a root place of it's. I mean, you're coming out of a place of hate because you're clearly doing it to cover up how you actually feel.
Yeah, yeah. I think that's another pretty large topic. We could probably get more into that, but
Yeah.
I think that valuing before you can build a strong foundation, w- externally with a business or bodybuilding or whatever it is, a family, anything like that, you need to have a good internal foundation.
Yeah.
Because, I mean, you can't build a strong foundation if you're not strong yourself.
Yeah.
You don't even know what a strong foundation feels like if you don't have that. And once you have a strong foundation, it's not hard to maintain because that's who you are. It's very difficult to change yourself. A lot of people struggle changing. I mean, there's a lot of people who say changing yourself is a negative thing. It's really not. Especially if it's like, sure, you can love yourself along the way.
Yeah.
That's not a problem. That's not the
it
issue.
depends on how you build onto yourself.
Yeah, for sure. I think there's a lot of different ways you can you can change yourself, and I think it varies person to person, varies based on how you grew up, who you lived with, who you have shared experiences with, um, and things like that. But yeah, I think I don't know. I think at the end of the day, again, this is a topic we need to get in. It would be a much longer topic, um, but yeah, I think it's very important, specifically before prioritizing external goals.
Yeah.
Prioritize yourself first. Prioritize your goals first, and what you like.
Where it's coming from.
Yeah, if you don't know why you want things, if you don't even know what you want, you're just going based on what other people think. Like, oh, it's really great if you would get into computer science because it pays really well.
Yeah.
I don't know anything about computer
And
science.
I don't care about it.
Sure, I might make a good career that way, but
Yeah.
do I feel good doing that?
Yeah.
No, not at all. I'm not
Right.
passionate about it.
Yeah.
I'm gonna live my life empty.
Yeah.
You know.
Exactly. Question was basically if they. I want to make sure I articulate this right. Some people will give advice that's like, oh, you're worried about not achieving your goal. You're worried about this fear of failure. What? Why don't you just, focus on what you can control? Take your mind off of all these worries and all these fears. Just focus on what you can do. I wanted to know, did you think that that's an effective strategy, or do you think that's sort of taking your mind off of those worries and almost distracting yourself from what might actually shine real light into where your problem is coming from in the first place?
I think it is true you can only control what you can control. But I think the advice that you should only try and control, you won't know what you can't control unless you try and control, if that makes sense. Yeah. You don't know the areas, like if if you feel like something's out of your control, that doesn't mean it is out of your control. If you're in a bad situation and you're like, yeah, but how do I get out of this? It feels like it's all out of my control. It would definitely it wouldn't stand like it wouldn't be helpful to anybody to just assume that it's out of your control and stand by that just because you're like, okay, this is out of my control. At least try and change the situation, or you know, give it a chance. Try and improve the areas that you feel maybe sometimes you feel like you can't improve this area or you can't improve that area. At the end of the day, you would never know until you do try it.
Do you think that that's still attacking the surface and not going deeper though, or do you think that that approach of like just focusing on the situation um, is going to change the effects of um, whatever else is going on?
I think it's not black and white. I think that's definitely something that applies differently in a lot of different situations. And it takes critical thinking to realize, and definitely a lot of practice to realize what you're able to change, and to realize what you're able to improve and things that you really truly can disregard or not disregard, but that you can leave be, because if you there's things you'd be able to recognize. You can't change the weather. Um, you can't change the tide. You can't change any of that. Those are things you can set as this is going to be this is how it is. Now I must fit myself in, knowing this is something I cannot change. If you spend your time trying to fix the tide, change the tide, and build a house on the beach, it's gonna flood. You know, as much as you might try and change that thing you can't control, it's not gonna change.
What do you think people focus more on, the external situations and putting themselves into that, or the root situations and dealing with how they respond to the from base?
I think a lot of people will end up getting stuck trying to build strong external foundations before they have a strong internal foundation. Um, you can build a decent foundation if um it could be a healthy foundation. Again, a healthy foundation will still help you improve internally. With your struggles, you'll figure out how to work on different things in different ways and figure out what would benefit you in the healthiest way. Um, oh, I just blanked. What was I saying? Remind me.
Well, essentially, the question topic was like, do you think that people are going to focus more on external?
Yeah, I think people get stuck in that loop where they found the healthy way of building external foundations, but they're doing it through the lens of an unhealthy mindset. They're doing it through the lens of something, you know, if you cannot trust your thoughts, and you can't trust the foundation that you're standing on, or you don't even think about the foundation that you're standing on, you won't know if the external foundations are strong, if that makes sense. You can build strong external foundations, but they're gonna break down just because you're the one building them. Your internal foundations are below the external foundations. They they're where the external foundations sit upon.
The external can look pretty, but if the internal,
You can get distracted pretty easily by that. Yes, exactly. Nobody's gonna see that internal foundation except for you. But I think it's much flashier, and it's much more desirable to try and build external improvements. Try and build a business, or try and make money, or try and have a good body, or try and improve the way that you talk or speak or work or walk or run or play sports. Um, you can only get so far with you can only build so much on that weak internal foundation. Um, I that's just my thoughts on that.